Here, we'll put that back up. Is my boot coming up? No? There we go. Hey, folks, Nick Tockert here with the Historical Fencing Guild. Before we get into it, we do have to, pay our bills, so to speak. The Historical Fencing Guild is made possible with the love and support of our good friends over at the Dependent Creator. Paying me, that works too, but over at the Independent Creator Directory, that's IndieCD.org, your one-stop shop for the best and the brightest authors, artists, and musicians. We're also made possible by sales of, I don't want to make a mess. Here we go. The Simple Sword, the Fighting Axe, and the Simple Spear. All part of my ongoing series of Western martial arts manuals designed to help you go from having never handled the sword to teaching the art to others. Now, let me set some things up. We have a good bit to discuss today, because I'm going to need this, I'm going to need this, I'm going to need that. Excellent. Today we're going to talk about understanding small unit tactics and how your role in them is not just determined, but how it applies with everyone else in your unit. Now, so we'll have to talk about some things. So let's do this. We're going to do this, and we're going to do this. All right, my whiteboard is up. Life is good. In fact, I'll put myself where I usually am. There we go. This is nice. When we're talking about roles in small units, a small unit I find would be it's greater than 2, and it is less than or equal to 10, roughly. Now, this is just understanding what, so X would be right here, okay? This is X equal, whatever. My math is being farty. So we have this. When you have roles, first off, you're going to have a couple of, solitary role is going to be commander. It's important to talk about what makes a good commander in melee. The commander does, what they do need and what they, so we're going to go do, don't. Okay? A good commander needs to be vocal. They need to be aware. And we'll get into what that means. I'm going to fix this because I am just free writing this as I go. This is going to be, we're going to branch vocal in giving commands, in training. A good commander should be some type of teacher, some type of instructor. They have to do this because that is the single best way for them to, there we go, for them to be able to assign roles. And that's where we get into aware. They need to know their members, the members of their unit, abilities. They have to know their abilities. They have to know their current state and their tendencies. What do I mean about that? Okay. When you look as a small unit commander, you have to, before you're even on the field, know what your students or your members' abilities are. You have to know, are they fighting a style that's strong for them? So if it's single, how good are they at single? If it's open, single rapier. I will be using a lot of old SCA rapier terminology. I slip into it. If that becomes a problem, please let me know. I will work on it. But I did spend 12 years in, and it will forever affect my thinking. But usually my thinking was spiteful, so that gets interesting too. But you need to know, are they good and are they in a position to succeed? So, and their roles, you'll have to know their current state. Are they working around an injury? Are they working around a permanent disability? Are they working around a limitation because of something else? Maybe they're having to borrow gear and the gear doesn't fit. Maybe they're maybe they're forced into a fighting style they don't like. Maybe they're overheating. A lot of times you got to watch everybody for heat. Watching for heat is going to be the biggest and most important role of a commander, in my opinion, because you have to keep an eye both on yourself and your fighters, your people, and watch for signs of heat. Because what we do when we are sparring and we're playing in melee, in armor, overheating is common and it is deadly. So in response to that, you have to be what you desire from them. You always have to be an example. Okay? You always have to be an example. And that gets us into the tendencies. You have to be aware of not just your colleagues, again, your members, your fighters, their styles, but their proclivities. Are they an aggressive fighter? Are they a very mobile fighter? Are they not mobile? Okay. Are they more passive defensive fighter? When you are training, you always want to train to address the weakest parts. Maintain the best parts, but address the weakest parts in training. In melee or in tournament, you always want to be working towards their using their best. Put them in the place where they can shine. Okay? And during all this, they have to be, as a leader, you need to be confident. Oh, you have to be. Now this is part of the CNC, confident and competent. My spelling may be off. The fact that I'm dyslexic, I just do the best I can. But must always be these guys. Add calm to it too, because now you've got pieces of what you need to do. Okay? Because at the end, winning or losing as a unit is going to fall on you. No matter what, that is your end point. That is your destination. The buck stops with you. Somebody may have a bad day. Somebody may be off. Doesn't matter. You're in command. It ends with you. Okay? These are going to be the pieces that make you better in any situation. What you don't need to be. All right, guys. This is where we're gonna bump some heads. First off, tall. Yes, it does make it a heck of a lot easier to see and analyze the battlefield if you are tall. Okay? It helps. It isn't necessary. As long as you can get enough information, you don't have to be the tallest person there. You don't need to be, quote, the best. Okay? You don't need to be the strongest. You don't need to be the fastest. You don't even need to be the best fighter. Okay? You need to understand who is and to be able to put them in positions where their skills will do the most impact for the least effort, and that they can have the support they need. Do you understand that? That you can, through a mess, through analysis, you can put the pieces on the board. All right? So that's going to cover the, you're not the strongest, you're not the fastest, you're not the most anything. Ornate. Best equipped. This is another gatekeeping technique that I see time and time again in groups. I've seen it in AmpGuard groups. I've seen it in SCA groups. I've seen it in LARP groups, outside of those organizations. I keep seeing it where people think if you're going to be the commander, you have to have the shiniest gear, the nicest gear, the most expensive gear. You do not need any of that. You need functional gear that does not impede you. You do need, and we'll put it over here, to be, because this is in full Nick notes, so don't worry if it doesn't make sense to you, identifiable by your student. I'm sorry, I train a lot with my students, so that's where my brain goes. A lot of the people I fight with were people who I started from the get-go, so I have overlapping in small units. Okay. In fact, oftentimes it's better if you're not. Now, I'm going to put front slash back of the fight. I will say you should not, unless it is necessary for morale, be the person who is at the front of the charge unless there's a dang good reason. And this isn't cowardice. This is the realization that you are the one who's coordinating the fight. You need to be where you can see what's going on and you can act to offset it. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Just like you don't need to hide in the back either. You want to be in the middle of it. You need to be, I hate to say you need to be where you need to be at a moment. But one thing about a great commander in here is they are a floater. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but we'll understand that this needs to be, okay, sorry. This needs to be analyzed, okay? You need to understand this, okay? They also don't need to necessarily be the oldest, but they should be among the most, but have much experience, okay? Many times the oldest person will not have the physicality necessary to do a lot of the role of a commander. And that's where you start having some problems. But these are all pieces that I've seen used to gatekeep people. Okay? You know, this is gatekeeping by the physical. This is gatekeeping by talent. This is gatekeeping by funds. That's gatekeeping by age. And this is, both of these are traps against the character of the commander. Of the commander. Okay. These don't these don't require these aren't required for the rule, despite the fact that many people will try to tell you so. All right? I'm just going to take a break. I'm going to have a bit of a drink here because my throat is quite dry. Yes, that is a huge bottle of Diet Mountain Dew. Yes, it is required. I've had quite a day. Okay? I will be continuing this discussion from the perspective of educating a new commander. Okay? I will only be going with what I know. There will be many, many ways to expound on this. This is where you have to remember my personal role in what I'm attempting to do with the guild and my books. I am trying to bridge the gap between having no knowledge or limited knowledge absorbed from media, TV, etc., games, to be actually able to apply this and apply it successfully. The analyses, and if you go into the Simple Sword, I have a lot of analysis in there. The Simple Sword has a lot of analysis of the types of fighters you're going to encounter. What we're going to talk about is, instead of opposing those kinds of fighters, how to use those kinds of fighters. Okay? I'm actually going to grab my book for reference, because I want to make sure I'm using the same terminology. I've been doing this so long, my terminology floats quite a bit. Let me see. And I will tell you the pages I am working out of once I get... we got to skip the equipment, skip the parries. Here we go. We will have to talk about the physicality of your membership, because it does have applications. So let's get a new frame. Give me just a moment, and we'll hide this. Okay. Analyzing. Oops. Your fighters. You're going to have to look, when you're analyzing them, let's talk about what you need to look at. The first is size. Okay? If you are going to have a shield wall of some sort, or hold a defensive line, you do not want, if you can avoid it, small defenders. You want to be able to large fighters are anchors. Okay. With exception to fire and forget / Scout Harriers. And I can't fix that, but it's okay. That's a whole different class. We'll talk about that later. What do I mean? Simple and frequent that I saw when I was SCA. So I am putting a very large, very stout individual here, okay? That neck is too long, but we'll worry about that later. Actually, we'll just make the head longer. There. It's not perfect, but we're not going to worry too much about it. Stout individual has warboard. We like warboard. Stout individual also, give me a second, has weapon. We like weapon. Okay, cool. If we are doing line combat, short individual and it doesn't matter their build, but we're just going to make them a little guy. Short individual has either spear or polearm. This setup allows for a we'll just put a little blade on the end. The large fighter to essentially have a third arm with which to attack. It is a devastatingly simple formation, but this from above looks a lot. I made him a lefty. Yay for being dyslexic and ambidextrous. And just for the point of amusement, that's way too big. Our small fighter will be slightly angled over, and they're targeting here. Okay? This can go on either side. It doesn't matter. If you have two small fighters, you can have a mini shield wall, essentially. This is the basis of a two-rank system. Okay? Ranks being in the format of shield, spear. I want to give this a little different look. There we go. That looks like garbage. That's okay. You can tell it's a spear. I'll fix it later. And archer. Where did my color go? We'll go back here. It's probably this. Archer. 1, 2, 3. Now, there is a chance that you don't start in this order, but you need these two to be able to switch and split as needed. Meanwhile, especially a ranged fighter needs to be able to flank around and get clear shots. But if you have a large fighter, be they mobile or stationary, you can anchor and train your people to anchor on one large fighter. Do you understand? This is the basics of what we're doing. Because if you have multiples in your shield wall of multiple large fighters, and you'll note what I instinctively did, We have shields to the outside, swords to the inside. You can flip that with shields to the inside. But if you do this, the spearman is more expected to come through. They don't expect the spearman to arc around as much, I found, and engage through the sword side, especially if the spearman is working a very low line. Now you're saying, well, what if there aren't spears? That's fine. This is a long single rapier. Okay? This is one of the fundamental best ways to work with your lines. Okay? And you have to figure out who goes where. Okay? Likewise, I mentioned that movement and things are anchored on the large fighter or the defensive fighter. So let's say you have another. We're going to make this is a shieldman, okay? And I'm trying to keep them right-handed so it's easier for you guys to see. Okay, this doesn't matter. Okay, one thing you need to understand: this doesn't matter if it's rapier and buckler, or sword and board. Sorry, sword and shield. Whatever. The guy with the defensive object that can block. The guy holding up the table that he's kicked over in the bar fight. You're going to see the same kind of tactics. This is the person who all the movement is hinged on. This is the person the majority of tactics are angled around, if possible. Because usually they are the least mobile. Now, this is again usual. Okay? If this is an aggressive fighter, okay, so if your shieldman does not see the, hold on. The shield is not a board. It's a plow. Okay? Shield, not wall, but plow. If that is the case, then your little dudes just have to be faster, more aggressive. Okay? So these guys have to be running because they still need to at least keep up. That doesn't look right. And I don't want any confusion. Unfortunately, I know some of the people who follow my group. Okay. Maybe they have a small weapon and larger weapon. Spearmen don't usually advance, but this is where you have to train your pulse charge uh, Harriers, uh, and possibly Fire and Forget group. Because it depends on what you're doing and what you're equipped with as a unit. Okay? Understanding these units' abilities will let you deploy them best. But you can't unless you understand them. Your standard defensive fighter, because usually sword and board goes to the fighter who is most inclined to be defensive. You want at the center of your line. Okay? And the reason is this. You want the slowest in the middle, fastest on the outside. Okay? That way, this is the hinge point. If a group needs to wheel, wheel left, wheel right, that means the whole facing changes. Because they're advancing and they swoop in from this angle, your opponents. He is the slowest, so he's most likely to break the line if he's on the end, or she, or them. Okay? So they have to be gathered toward the middle. Just like the defensive fighters. So our buddies who we just talked about, I'm trying to simplify this from above, are going to be center of your formation, your starting formation. Your aggressive fighters, so we've got defense, usually your ag fighters are going to be guys with multiple weapons. Very often, they lurk on the edges of your secondary line. So if we go back here, playing among the spearmen over here would be your offensive fighters and your aggressive fighters, because they can then swoop out or through if need be to either help patch a hole if somebody goes down, or help or take advantage of an opening that you see. So they need to be able to stay mobile. Okay. So, and we've got our spearmen, and we're just situating them in the middle over here. You need most mobile defenders cover flanks. Okay? They need to be able to fall back and still hold the line. They need to be able to move forward and still hold the line. And with the, especially under the right command, go. You get that? It's very, very simple. Okay. Spearmen. To go back to our buddies, the spearmen, who are this line, they are usually made up of the snipers. So we're going to say spearmen. If we're keeping this straight to melee, and we're keeping it straight to melee weapons, so hand-to-hand weapons, not ranged, and group fighting, these are your snipers that that poke out. Okay, so when somebody has that defensive mindset, but they just wait for that one tempo shot, that's these guys, and those are the ones you want as your spearmen. Your aggressive fighters also include your dancers. The people who either, because of the style of weapon, are not fighting it in a way that is suited for line combat. So some polearm users, some great weapon users, they take up their style because it wheels so much, take up a vast amount of space that you can't have a line in because you're endangering your other teammates, your other units. So these guys, they are either, and often are, on the flanks, on just outside the flank. Why did I put in and? The flanks of the line, or they're advancing, or they're serving as again, fire and forgets. These are the people you say, okay, hang out over here for a minute and be our reserve. When the fight starts, then come in and get them. Okay? So I'm just going to put some boxes here to be assorted bad guys. They hang out and they want to engage the enemy's flank. They want, what they really want to do is get that behind. If they can get behind the lines and wreak havoc with close quarters, lots of opponents, they're usually in a happy time. Okay? So that's going to give you the basics of how your units are going to function. And you're going to have to, okay, give me another one. So, as a commander, you must assess, train, and improve your units. And we're just going to say units because I'm getting tired of bouncing around. Both individually and working as a whole. Okay? Does this make sense? You need to get through your failings, okay? And you need to help them find their mistakes. Even if you can't physically get there, you need to be able to see their weaknesses, convey their weaknesses, and help or have other members help them address it. Other mandates. Okay. Barring extreme situations, no one gets left behind. Okay? You guys are a small unit. You cover each other's backs. Nobody gets left. I mean, if they get knocked out, it is a game. It is a game of combat. That is to be expected. They either go respawn, if that's in the rules, or they're gone. There's nothing you can do about that. For our purposes, we're not talking about actually acquiring and retaining the bodies of the fallen. Okay, that's a little more grim than I want to go. What I'm talking about primarily is legged fighters. Okay. As long as the scenario allows, units form up on legged fighters to aid and protect while either removing them or allowing them to fight, to continue to fight from their position. Okay? Now I know the whiteboard is really filled up this time, but there's a lot of good quality stuff being had here. What that means is if a fighter, even if they're a single fighter, Always making my dudes left-handed. It's okay. Has been legged. So they're on their knees. They're still armed. The line then forms on them where they're going to hold the position and continue the bout. Yes, that can impede most form up, continue the bout. Okay? Yes, it makes it more difficult. Yes, it can interfere. And yes, there will be times when, as much as we want to do this, the scenario won't let you, because it may be a get out and remove a threat. That being said, if we have any other opportunity, I want my people trained both in moving as a unit when you are providing escort for a VIP or injured person. How to clear through a crowd, whether it's aggressive or not, if you need to. And the reason we do this is I have been in situations where it's crowded, somebody gets hurt, and while the crowd itself is not currently malicious, they are impeding the ability to get this person safe, and they may be about to act in ways that could be harmful, e.g., an untrained mosh pit. Just simple things like that. I want them thinking in terms of protecting each other. And as a commander, you do too. So on the individual level, you want to make sure your units are healthy. This is chiefly heat, hydration, and blood sugar. Or pickles, half ice packs, half pickles and diluted Gatorade, and then an assortment of snacks. Make sure, so we're going to just say, make sure the style and rule match the unit's strengths. And mitigate weaknesses. You may have somebody who is small enough, light enough, that they aren't comfortable holding a full-length rapier. Either you give them a spear-like object that they can hold with both hands, or something like daggers, and their job is to be up-close harriers. Okay? Shields are also a possibility. But you want to make sure of this. You want to make sure all units are both familiar with their colleagues. Again, I apologize on any spelling errors. And their methods. This is here to train them to be paying attention to the field. But for the purpose of this discussion, paying attention to the to what your companions are doing. If you train right, you need very few commands. If you train enough, they will just know what to do, and your job is just to make adjustments when required. And I'm told often, you need to shout your commands. Not necessarily in small units. In small units, you can use hand signs. You can use simple body language. I've been shoulder to shoulder with Trey many times, covering each other, switching whatever's needed to make a fight go, because we have each other's back. Okay? Because your goal, a commander's goal, is to train up as many sub-commanders as possible. A commander should be making every effort to elevate those beneath him in their skill set. Though the chain of command in a scenario needs to be absolute. It is possible that a sub-commander you train may end up a better commander than you are. And if a discussion for small units, you want them to do that, or them to develop their own unit, that is fine and dandy. But optimally, you want any discussion like that has to happen when you are not in combat. Any discussion like that has to happen when you are not engaged. Because while it does develop the student or the lower ranking individual, however your hierarchy is arranged, it changes like that can't happen on the field because you cannot have two commanders in the same group. It causes a conflict. I'm going to write that down. You cannot have two commanders in a given group. Okay? You just can't. There is too high a risk of, I had it. Oh, it was the C word. I had it, and it just fell off my ear. Conflicting orders. This is not necessarily a hold hands, kumbaya, everybody is equal kind of thing. Because for the purpose of this, everyone isn't equal. How to use sub-commanders in melee. Okay. First off, they have to know that they're sub-commanders. They have to understand that. Whatever turn you need, knight to squire to, whatever. So you're going to have hierarchy. Okay? You have your commander. You have your, that should have been up there, but okay. Defense group. Format. Your subcom. And then unit. Yep. Okay. Now you can think of this as knight as king. Yeah, we're not going to get into the general part. Knight, squire, man at arms. Okay? And you're going to have the same thing in your support. That's going to be where your snipers live. This is your spears. Same structure. Okay? So you'll have a subcom. And then whatever unit is under them. And then you have, again, your Harriers. / fire and forgets. Now, this is a special one. This is a special group. Because your Harriers are going to be the ones who operate these. Okay, they operate with most freedom. Because this group here, the overwhelming line is hold the line for the defenders. That's what they do. These are the support the line. Oops. I stutter when I write too. The line. Okay. These guys are going to fill in. They're going to provide extra fire, provide cover, etc. This is find enemy weakness and exploit at your own have the word intelligent discretion. This is a very, very we're asterisks after find enemy weaknesses or create them. Okay. The commander, for the most part, needs to be focused on these guys, the defenders and the support / aggro over here. These guys. So there probably should be another line for aggro. We'll give the aggro group their own section, but you get the gist. These guys, the commander rarely needs rarely needs to order. Okay? These guys are the ones who are going to find, fun things like find gap in shield wall. Target enemy commander. disrupt enemy movement. So, whatever possible, these are the guys who are going to be the pain in the opponent's butt. And the more that the bad guys are trying, the enemy's trying to chase them, the less they're paying attention to the main group. It literally splits the opponent's attention. The commander must recognize and react we're going to put that bracket in appropriately to enemy actions. And that really, really depends a lot on the scenario. But, you know, impair movement. Whatever. Give me a second. I'll rewrite that because my brain's just. I'm thinking so deep that all my bad. Here. Yep. Okay, it'll work. Nope. Oh, we'll see. Movement of enemy forces. Target / recognize the weaknesses, just like your fire and forgets. They have to figure out understand as quickly as possible. Yeah, I think I need that pen back because something's really annoying me. Enemy intention and methodology. This right here is just about the sum of what a commander can do, because that they have to understand that, and then they just have to make it not work. Whether you can distract them, defeat them, diffuse them through diplomacy. So, or destruction. So, you know, defeat, diffuse, Diplomacy destruction. Defeat is simple. Win. Victory conditions. This is going to be your bread and butter. This is your favorite word in the universe. Win the victory conditions. That's what you want if you are engaging in combat. Diffuse is literally convince your opponents to not fight. Through education or education or communication. Often with leverage. This is where you get into the equivalent of blackmailing your opponents. No problem. Diplomacy is much like diffuse, but whereas diffuse tends to be more internal, closer groups, diplomacy comes down to making and asking concessions. A real easy way to think of it is if you leg an opponent, au laissez roll, you courtesy, you give them a chance to get down to their knees. You ask them, are you comfortable? Do you wish to yield? This can be allowing, see, this is where also allowing for surrender. Okay? On either side. You may have to surrender. That's diplomacy. But how you surrender can destruction is annihilation of all enemy assets. And forces. This is on whatever scale you're fighting. And a lot of this I've slipped into a much larger scale, but you have to be able to think this way. Is there is fighting to win a war. Okay. Fighting to win a war, fighting to win a battle, fighting to have that level of victory, to achieve a specific goal. Those are victory conditions. What do you want? What are you willing to give and do to achieve it? That's where you have wiggle room. Okay? Once you get here, though, all this is done. That's done. This is your goals, and this is their goals. And you have to understand why and to what extent they're willing to go so that you know how to respond into, including some surrender if need be. Okay? Commanders must decide. I'm going to make that out later. Understand these options as levied by both sides of the conflict. It's not enough to fight, guys. A commander cannot simply fight. A commander cannot simply, I am following orders. They're not a commander if they are. A commander has to understand why to a measure. A commander needs to see what he needs to do to establish the victory conditions for your unit in this conflict. And that should be this conflict. Things like survival. This is where you are starting either in a defensive or offensive role, and you just need to keep your people alive. Survival should almost always, be primary goals. You would think that I shouldn't have to say that, but a great many poor commanders are too eager to spend the coinage of their units, of their support, of their staff, of whatever. Achieve X goal within, get my hand to work, thank you, given time frame. So that is go in at whatever o'clock. Somewhere around dark 30. Okay. Because either you are going to the wall to hold the line, or you are going to the enemy to engage them. With minimal, my mind is outrunning my hand, I'm sorry, losses, and time, you're either going to acquire a noun, and what I mean is / remove a noun / escort a noun safely, and then get out by some fixed time. And again, I am making this as blunt, as simple, as dull as I can, in hopes that it will sink in the most to the most viewer. This is high metacognition things. This is not the specific commands. This is not if this, then that. That's a lower level of analysis, a more focused level of analysis. By being able to figure out, and this is what a commander has to do. And this covers almost every possible outcome. Don't die. Needlessly. The grim truth is anyone can be lost in a real scenario, in a training scenario, in a sparring session, whatever you're calling it. Anyone can be lost. The commander needs to always keep this in mind, and if need be, make it. We're just going to do this bleeping count. That is the go not gentle clause. Go not gentle clause. This is a Waterloo situation. no viable option for victory no viable option for escape. This is when you've been weighed, measured, and found lacking. If surrender and capture are not possible, then so I'll phrase this carefully. It's a little more serious, but then inflicting maximum damage to the enemy and creating the most chaos and disruption. Is the, not to, come on, Nick, the only remaining option. This is the one you never want to face. This is the one you never want to do. This is the one you never want to deal with. In any system, in any scenario, in any event, this is the blackest day. This is the darkest night. This is the impossible end. Strange things happen at this point. Okay? If you surrender and are captured, there is the chance of escape. If that's not an option, there you go. Okay? At the end of the day, a true commander I'll dare say a true leader is an unflinching servant to the needs of the mission and the needs of their unit. The wants, desires, and even comforts of a commander must always come last. If you are the commander of a small unit in anything, you make sure your unit is taken care of before you get to take care of yourself. The only exception being when not taking care of yourself would be a greater impingement on your unit through your absence. I know this last bit. Let me go full size for this. Hold on. There we go. I know that last bit was a bit philosophical. It was perhaps a bit grim. But I have found that the way we approach actions and simulations, the priorities we find, the methodologies we use in games, in low or no threat scenarios. What we reach for time and time again there is what we will reach for time and time again when there is an issue. And I want to equip anyone who I think is going to lead people in any aspect, any chance that someone is watching this. I want to, as part of the karmic debt of teaching applied violence and the strategies therein, I must also teach the ethics, the morality, the goal of command of this situation. Because at the end of the day, no matter what you're playing, you want everybody to go home safe. You want everybody to be whole when they leave. And in what we do, That means I make sure everybody's gear's in place. I make sure everybody's drinking. I make sure everybody's fed, that anybody with relevant medications has taken them. And then, for their sake, you have to look after yourself. That, to me, is the definition of what a leader should do. And it could be said, and it probably is being thought by anyone watching this, that if this is a true statement, if this is an actual valid morality when looking at being a leader of anything, why are so few of the people who have leadership roles so far from this set of morality, this set of standards? And I will respond that in our youth, very often leadership goes to the loudest, the apparently strongest. Not necessarily the most appropriate. Not, it's not the best person. Very often leadership is a popularity contest. And that is a truly incredibly political thing to say, in the concept of actually looking at the mechanics of politics, the mechanics of leadership. And applying that. This does not target any given individual. This does not target any given party. I am comfortable saying, but if the shoe fits Cinderella, lace it up and wear it. But it is the definition of the standard on the philosophical side. And I can show you basic strategies. I can show you pincer movements and flanking and all that good stuff. But so can a great many others. It is well covered, it is well documented. Pulse charges, all that. If we're looking at vaguely medieval battle tactics. And whatever group you're in, you will find layers of that style of tactical information. You can look at the strategies to employ, and that's all well and good. But while it can be easily said that in America, leadership is held and achieved on the basis of one's wealth, largely. Not always, but largely. That in no way is a label of value, because there are too many ways that wealth can be acquired. And frankly, when you get to a certain level, it's almost mechanically impossible to acquire that level of wealth in any ethical way, which is a problem. Again, I'm not naming names. I'm not targeting any groups. I am saying this from a macro level. But what I do not see when I see these things brought up, and the topic of leadership and command comes up a lot, is understanding the ethos behind it. Because if you look at the processes I've talked about, and especially this end piece, the necessity of servant leadership, beyond having the means to get there, beyond having the charisma to hold people's attention, which is all well and good and necessary to either have or develop. Without this ethos, without this idea of the chief eats last only after the orphans and widows have eaten. Only then can we have effective leadership, because anything lacking that core morality is destined to fail. Maybe not now, maybe not for a long time, but it is destined to fail as individuals and as possibly systems, depending what's behind it. I'm not encouraging the destruction of any given system. I am predicting it in many systems. And how you respond, both on the field and in the field of your mind, will dictate how you go forward. I have a bit of a parable, if you will, certainly an anecdote on this matter and how I got to where I am. Amongst other things, I took business leadership during my college career at Purdue University, at the time North Central. I will not name the short-lived professor who was there, but he would only attend every fourth class. So the equivalent of three weeks of the month, he just wouldn't attend. You're on your own. So in this class, it was a small class, but we were still held to the quiz when he'd come back, because his attitude was, at this age, if you can't read and understand this, I'm not going to read it to you like a child. Merciful gentleman that was. Anyway, he went on like that. And at that time, I had been doing a lot of long-term subbing. My way of learning oftentimes involved writing on a big whiteboard so I could see the concept, stepping back, and then writing small notes and sorting everything out in my head, trying to understand. And since most people knew the prof wasn't going to come, the classroom was empty, so I would do this. And it turned out one or two of my fellow students uh, would come in and watch me do this, and then they started asking me questions. And before long, the majority of the class came to every session to listen to me lecture for free, because the prof was going to grade us on it, but he was not going to pronounce the information. In fact, the whole class was almost entirely weighed on this project where we designed a ad program for a product he was producing. Yes, that's unethical as all heck. But my group did okay. The second group did better because he liked that they attacked us instead of talking about the product. He went after the other guys. This was a very Wolf of Wall Street kind of businessman. At the end of the semester, I got a B, which I find hilarious because I got a B in a class I basically taught. I did not seek a leadership role. A leadership role found me. This happens a lot. And I think it's important that anyone at least be exposed to the ideas of how to do it well. Because very often, the people who are best at positions are least desiring of that position. And very often, the people who are most desiring of said position are among the worst to hold it. I want to see the world improve. I want to see the world get better. Not just help the students I acquire, and I have a small gaggle of teenagers that I am now working with informally because we haven't organized and I live just a bit farther than I thought. But I want each and every one of them to learn these concepts so that in the sparring that you do, in the scenarios which we play as games, we are learning and developing and honing skills that are beneficial both for life and for the world around us. Because whereas I do not personally have the means to directly make things better on a measurable scale, I have the sincere hope, the sincere effort, the sincere dream that perhaps the words I put out, the instruction I give, will be something that finds its way to the person or persons who have more capacity to affect change. And that hopefully, through some of this instruction, the changes they affect will be better. Kinder. More honorable. even knowing that these ideas that I hold very often are not monetarily profitable. They're not terribly popular. They may even be dangerous to expound. But they're important. I don't just want my viewers to be the best, sword people they can. I don't just want you guys to be able to defend yourselves if necessary, analyze threats, and neutralize them before they happen. I want and I hope that through this, through the application of necessity, which may include violence, but the application of necessity is done always in a competent, composed, and kind manner. All right, folks? Thank you for sticking around, the folks who stuck around. Thank you for anyone who comes and views this later. I apologize if this was rambling or unorganized. This was done entirely off the cuff. But I'm glad I did it, because perhaps it will help one of you. And it might even help me a bit to have said it and heard it myself. So, guys, keep your guard up. Do your drills. Be kind to yourself and each other. And as always, thank you for supporting the local Swordmaster. If you value what I do, please feel free to join the Patreon. Honestly, the vast majority of what I do, I channel here. I don't hide a lot for the patrons. I intend to, but I'm about helping people as best I can. So, I will see you guys either next time on this channel on YouTube, or over on my other channel, the Nicholas Talkert channel, or on the Nicholas Talkert channels on Kick and Twitch, to have more discussions on these. I have some surprises I'm going to talk about, new cameras to hopefully hold and record some really great material. But until all that happens, toodles, folks. Good night.